Okay, Rose, can you hear me all right?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're a little louder now. Okay, good.
Okay.
So I'm connected in?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, excellent. I want to extend my appreciation for all of you who have come to participate. I'd also like to thank Rose and BL and the Moya Federation for the opportunity to explore some of these new and creative areas of research. As everyone knows, this is really not a forum to dispense endless minutia or details. But information is important as a base, and it helps us through the lower mind understand the more abstract and intuitive realms. Now, we were going to start, and I was going to showcase some of Walter Poulin's wonderful work. Does anybody know if he's on yet? Because he may
He
not.
is. He's
Okay.
here.
Okay, excellent. Can you hear me, Walter? Can you connect me up with Walter?
Walter, you should be able to talk now, right? Walter, can you hear us?
Well, what we'll do, BL, is as we're waiting for him to connect up his audio, I'm going to begin outlining some of this important work that he's doing, and then he can just chime in and take over and really clarify it. We have a couple of wonderful videos that Walter has made that shows astrological charts in 3D. Is that you, Walter?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
I certainly can.
Most excellent.
Okay, and I was just giving you an introduction, so this is perfect timing. And can you see how I've got one of your quotes up top there?
Yes, I can. I could hear you all along, but it's just that my microphone was using a different audio device and therefore I could not speak before now.
It's comforting, Walter, to know that others have these little technical glitches besides myself.
We are all in this together.
So, Walter, I want you to sort of take over here, and I have several of your videos that we're going to view the solar system one in 3D astrologically and your sphere charts. We may have to wait another session to do your triple sun chart and other contributions. But so please, I want you to sort of outline this, and I've taken your quote, but here we have you directly.
Yes, indeed. So yes, that quote describes it well. And what I've done is make a graphic depiction of the solar system that can show the planets animating and to really visualize how they are. Because many things that we deal with in astrology, like wheel charts, they are good and they serve their purpose, but they can disconnect us from what's really out there. And so a solar system orbit chart can really get us back to seeing the 3D depiction of the solar system and the way it is, and to just be able to really visualize how it is and how aspects can still be viewed even from planets as they orbit the sun, which is what that solar system video will show.
Excellent. We have the links, and they'll be a part of the recording, so viewers can come back, go to Makara, and find many of these links if you're not able to connect into them right now. So let's start with the first one. And we're doing this a little differently. This session, we had some technical difficulties, and to eliminate those technical difficulties, we're having separate folders. So what we're going to view right now is Walter's wonderful Astrolog Solar System Orbit Helix animation. Excellent, Walter. That is profound. And we're going to review a little later in the session some of the other contributors to animations showing the solar system and the planets revolving around it. But there's no question that yours is far ahead of the rest as far as exactitude, to use one of the key words that Michael Robbins used in his wonderful astrological and psychological work.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. I want you to chime in.
Oh yeah, I just want to say that that video, it does show a few different things. For one, it's very visual and not technical. But at the same time, it is accurate. The planets are positioned accurately, and that it does do a little bit of synthesis of astronomy and astrology. In other words, you can see the spirals, which are the astronomical orbits, but
Yeah.
then there's also the astrological aspects coming between the planets. And then, of course, the whole thing is seen from different angles, allowing one to visualize it from all sides and therefore get a little bit of an idea of the whole or what's really going on here.
Well, you can stop it at any point and you can see all the triangles and the individual alignments. But the ability to take that and set it in motion, in my opinion, is important, because when we try to review what the Tibetan says about 2025 and a new presentation of the ageless wisdom, I feel very confident that it's going to have to include not just additional information, which is certainly important, but it's going to present this ageless wisdom work in a new light. And if somebody were to ask me what I thought was missing from the ageless wisdom teachings, without any reservation, Walter, I would say it's motion. And when you study the treatise on cosmic fire as an example, you have the 3 types of fires and the 3 types of motion, but they're really actually used in teaching venues. The fact that we have rotary motion, the 3rd aspect of deity, something spins round and round. The 2nd aspect of deity, cyclic spiral. And then, of course, the 3rd type of motion, progressive motion, that DK says relates to the first ray. So if progressive motion is the shortest distance between 2 points, that would sort of be like the sun. And excuse me, then you have the 2nd aspect of deity, which is the corkscrew effect, or the helix, the vortex. And then, of course, you have rotary motion, which the whole thing is based on. So symbolically, we have a prototype here, Walter, that will be refined and to me will be part of the curriculum as we move towards that key juncture, 2025. And of course, this will have to be done in other departments, in healing, in meditation, psychology, all the different departments that relate and fuse. Okay, excellent. So let us go to the next animation of Walter's, and we'll play it, and then I'll let you comment on it, Walter, okay? Can you still hear me, Walter?
Yes, I can, thank you.
Okay, this one I didn't get the music to, Walter. I apologize if there was music with this.
Oh, there was not. You didn't miss anything. There is a YouTube video that has a animation of a chart sphere in which you like go inside of it and around. This is more of a simple animation that just spins it in place. They're both valuable, but this one does not have music.
Thank you for giving me that notice. I find this very, very evocative. And when you study the Tibetan's works, you will find that he places particular emphasis on visualization. And rightfully so, because it's the image making capacity, the visualization function, that allows us to take that which is unknown and make it real, make it tangible within our consciousness. In other words, visualization is the key of all bridge building of the Antakarana. Okay, would you like to share any additional thoughts on that?
Yes, yes. So what this animation is showing is a chart sphere, which is basically a 3D astrology wheel chart. And again, it's a visualization tool that allows one to visualize the 12 signs of the zodiac as well as the 12 houses, and particularly how they actually are in space upon the celestial sphere around us. So you can see the 12 signs of the zodiac are in purple, and you can see that they look like 12 orange wedges,
Yes.
and with the ecliptic, which in along the equator of those orange wedges, where most of the planets are near. And then there's the 12 houses, which are in green, and you can see them numbered 1 through 12, and you can see how they're oriented with respect to the local horizon. And so you have two different overlapping sets of orange wedges, so to speak,
Yes.
oriented to two different things, and that you can often don't really get that visualization in a flat 2D wheel chart, and so the chart sphere can help with that. And then more esoterically, you can say that a chart sphere, instead of staying limited in space to a flat two-dimensional wheel, it extends into the third dimension and depicts that. And similarly, it's related to esoteric astrology in general, because just as esoteric astrology in general, instead of being limited in vibration to the mundane personality level, esoteric astrology extends into higher dimensions of spirit.
Excellent. Well, DK says that the second ray student, which really comprises most of us working in these ageless wisdom teachings, and that's not to withstand that many second ray people have highly developed mental bodies. But the second ray types find an easier access into the ageless wisdom teachings through geometry, according to DK. And if you look at the trends historically, you will find people are reading less and less books, and they're perceiving different types of information and symbolic content through images. Now, that's not to say we're going to burn the books and we're going to be looking at nothing but animation and symbols and images, but it does show a trend for the future. And I have a personal belief that many of the advanced Aquarian types that are coming into incarnation will have done much of this work in previous incarnations. Now, that's not to say they may need to boot up their mental faculties to a high level, but at the same time, they want direct experiences. They want, as Marshall McLuhan said when he stumbled across the potency of media back in the 60s, he said, images that are animated, they seduce you, they surround you, they enter into your subconscious, they influence your self-consciousness. And we do know from the studies of Blavatsky and Bailey and a number of other luminaries that these symbols are alive. And when you visualize them, you're tuning into an intermediate place between the absolute reality and our human reality. HBB said all inner lives, occultly speaking, are spherical. And we need to make our thinking spherical to keep up with that evolution and that unfolding. Okay, excellent. Now, are there any questions or comments on what we have already shared here? Any questions that Walter can address? And while I'm waiting for hands to raise, if there's anyone, we presented, I think in the first presentation of this series, maybe I'm incorrect, the spherical chart that you see right here. But since then, Walter, as you can see, and this isn't everything, has extended it to new and really dynamic areas. Any questions or comments on what we've already shared?
Yes. We had a couple of people come in late, so they missed the first one, and I did go back to them and tell them that, you know, they can rewatch this. We will put it on Makara. But will you put Walter's website up again, the slide where you've got his website, so they can see that? I mean, they'll get it in the recording, and they'll get it in the slides and everything, but just for now.
Walter, or was it the previous one that's better? You see at the bottom of this www.astrolog.org. Okay, just use that. That will take you in and it'll connect you up. Okay, any additional other questions or comments?
That's all I see. I don't see any hands.
Okay, excellent. Walter, did you have any additional comments that you wanted to make before we move on?
No, except that that site, that website address is just fine. If you go to, you can even just go to astrolog.org and then just the root of it, and then there's be a definite link that takes you to the Astrolog page. And if you want to see the animations here, then you would want to just go into the See Features page, which has a page about 3D astrology, and has links to the various videos and animations seen there. So it's basically just want to, you know, the page there, and then click on See Features, and then on that page is where to find it.
Excellent. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take another contributor to making the it's more cosmological, or rather than astrological, but it does have, of course, the underpinnings of astrology. And the animation is probably a little higher quality than Walter's, but it does not have the fifth ray exactitude. And so I'm hoping in the future, Walter, if you're still there, that we will be able to take the wonderful work that you have embryonically started and get it polished and get it in high def and a number of other things, because it deserves it. And anything new in pioneering, any new prototype always requires a series of refinements. And being an artist, I can see downstream, Walter, in where this is going, even though I am not an astrologer per se. Okay, excellent. So what we're going to do here is look at another artist. And we would find that in my special video folder. Okay. The beauty of motion is so important. We're not trying to develop high art here. We're trying to present the occult teachings in a new and more dynamic way, one that's more user-friendly, one that's easier for people to interface. And this presentation, of which is in two parts, at least this particular artist's contribution is in two parts, once again does not have the exactitude and the technical proficiency of what Walter is doing, but it shows the versatility of animation and how potent it can be. When we study astrologically all these relationships, I think without making an effort, you can get sometimes lost in the details. And again, the details are important, but they only create a base in which we can open up the intuition in the higher mind and see, as the Tibetan would say, the grand mosaic. Are there any comments on this particular video before we start the next one? Or Walter, would you like to say anything?
I see in the future the different rays cooperating, so to speak, which
Yeah.
can create a synthesis of exactitude with artistry. It's
Yes.
similar to other, and that's the importance of group orientation and group work, where we
Yeah.
can actually bring all these qualities together, such as love, light, and power.
Excellent. This, if I understand your statement, would be the perfect fusion of ray 4 and 5. Not beauty for its own sake, not just a bunch of technicalities because they're interesting, but the fusion of ray 4 and 5, which expands the mental and gives a whole new opening to intuitive perception. Excellent, Walter. Excellent. Any other comments?
Yes, I'd like to say that, this is Rose, that that video of the solar system spiraling and the planets spiraling around the sun, and then the sun is spiraling around its in its orbit, and then our entire Milky Way is spiraling around something even greater. So it's this divine harmony and geometry in a circular 3/4 dimensional, on the physical plane level. But it really is like every moment is different. Every moment is not the same. I mean, we see the sun come up and we think, oh, it's the same, and the seasons come, the 4 seasons come and it's the same. But we're in a different location in the solar system, and the solar system's in a different location in the Milky Way, and the Milky Way is or our galaxy's in a different location in the universe. So every day, every year, every cycle is, I don't know if I can call it new because it might be a repeat, but is different. And I think that is somehow related to these cycles of evolution and ebbs and flows of whether it's civilizations or of cultures, or the whole wheel of evolution, is that even though it's the same turn of the wheel, it's a spiral, and we're now in it's different, and with different energies and different matrix of that astrological energies that are interplaying. Because how can the astrological energies not be affected when the entire galaxy has shifted just a little bit, or in a larger cycle and a much bigger shift? So I think those are things that it can be easy to lose the concept of, and like what you just shared, Dwayne, kind of re-emphasizes that even it is all this harmonious movement together, it's still not the same. There's still a progression, a part of a bigger cycle, and that's something it can be difficult to wrap your mind around.
Well, if I may be so bold, we may, in some small way, become successful with that statement, because we're not trying to pin something down, we're trying to open something up. And all teaching is repetitious, and it deals with memory. And often we get through schools and become professionals by becoming parrots. And I don't say that as a criticism, it's just what I've noted in the educational systems and in the academic worlds. And information is very powerful and it's very necessary. But how do we take all the information and compile it into one burning moment of revelation? And what you have described, in my opinion, Rose, is the higher aspect of the third ray, the mind of God. Not simply the mind of man, but the mind of man entering into the mind of God and seeing the huge dynamic, the huge tapestry of the gods, to use another Michael Robbins phrase that's so potent. This video is going to be followed by the same artist who did a second one. And it's interesting, Rose, that you mentioned that the sun is actually spiraling. The sun is not in a straight trajectory, but that's very, very difficult animation as an artist to portray. But this particular person who did this has done a fairly good job. And when he did the first video that we just watched, there was a lot of awing and oohing, but a few people pointed out the sun does not travel in a straight line. It is also corkscrewing through the heavens, and that's what we're going to see next. We're going to see his newer rendition of sort of the same theme, only with the sun in its proper relationship with motion. So let us pull that up right now.
Dwayne?
Excellent. Are there any comments? These are more in the nature of meditations.
Yeah, we have a couple of comments from Asha from the earlier picture or the earlier video by this guy.
Okay.
She said she loved the sounds and the high vibration, that it energized her, and that's not just the emotional body, is it?
Well, it's hard for me to know conclusively how participants are being stimulated, but my basic experience has been that images of this type, they stimulate the high astral Buddhic. And the Buddhic plane is really where all, in the high mental, are where all the hierarchical prototypes and symbols really reside. And this is sort of like a Jacob's ladder. It's like a bridge. You know, we think of building the Antakarana, and we have all these technical stages that are important to understand and to practice. But it has been my experience that once you've got that foundation, this Antakarana bridge can be immediately connected into, swollen or expanded just by the right symbol or image or animation. So yes, I think she's moving up into the higher astral Buddhic and into the higher mind.
That's all I see for right now.
Okay, excellent.
Dwayne, I have a question. Are you using Wi-Fi internet or are you using the Ethernet cable?
I'm using the Ethernet.
Okay.
Oh, it looks pretty clear from where I am. How about from where you are, BL and Rose?
It's clear that the video was a little choppy, I think. It wasn't some of the best video, but it got the point across. I mean, they were all amazing.
Thank you. Well, we'll have to keep working on this because it's a science and an art to be able to take high def off of YouTube and then filter it down through a number of conduits and have it come out or out in the same resolution. And it's important to get this feedback because we still have to keep working on this. Thank you for that.
And you're pointing us to the source. So any of us can then go to the real source and
Well, you
see
can
it
go directly
from
to
there.
videos as they exist on Vimeo or YouTube. Now, the next quote is a sort of a summary of why we need to study these profound cosmological and astrological influences. When a person is approaching the third initiation, they need to do certain things. And this quote, Rose, would you be kind enough to read this? Are you still on? Okay, I think she's off.
Would you like me to read it?
Yes, BL.
Yes, I can read it, Dwayne.
Okay. I'm going to have you read the next one, BL. Thank you, Rose.
Registering energies from outside of the solar system. Quote, it should be noted here, however, that all the energies, zodiacal, systemic, and planetary, have a definite effect upon all the lives in all forms in all kingdoms of nature. Nothing can escape these radiatory and magnetic influences. The goal of evolution for humanity is to become consciously and livingly aware of the nature of these energies and begin to know them and to use them. This is the field of occultism, as the hierarchy has always told man. It might be stated that the disciple has to become consciously aware of the planetary influences and begin to use them for the carrying out of soul purpose. The initiate has to be aware of the zodiacal influences which emanate from outside of the solar system altogether. These can be recognized as a vibration registered in one or other of the 7 centers. B, a revelation of a particular type of light conveying a specific color to the initiate. C, a particular note. Or D, a directional sound. And that's from Esoteric Astrology, page 23 through 24.
As a person approaches the third initiation, according to the Ageless Wisdom teachings, they begin to register those forces coming from outside of the solar system altogether. And how is that done? DK has just outlined right here 4 particular ways. And I would simply add to that, that the more third ray types in meditation and in their alignments will register a vibration in one or other of their chakra or 7 centers. The second ray types are apt to register their revelation as a certain type of light in conveying a specific color. And then C and D, a peculiar note and a directional sound, according to the Tibetan, excuse me, and there are many exceptions, and all of these can overlap at some point. They're not exclusively each to each ray. A directional sound and peculiar note is the first ray response to these high vibrations coming from outside of the solar system. Often I have people say to me, well, color is not that important. It's just a veil for something bigger and more important and more advanced. And that statement is true. However, light emanates in its different 7 qualities of color, right from the cosmic, astral, and mental plane, right down through all of the different conduits, all the different triangles. And yes, you don't have to register any one of these fully to be undergoing an initiation. But as time goes by and the different vehicles we work with become more purified, you will register these different notes and sounds and vibrations, because those are the 7 rays and working through the 7 planes and the Devic groups that work with them. And that's why we put a lot of emphasis in these presentations about awakening the intuition on color, light, vibration, sound. And so what we've just seen in animations, we are going to penetrate through the recognition of these 4 or 5 qualities. Okay, excellent. Any questions or comments?
Sorry, we have a couple of comments. Michael says, I see the images for our solar system, and through correspondences, apply it to the 7 solar system, of which ours is 1, and also to the one about whom not may be said, and beyond.
Absolutely. That's an important statement. And it's only through the law of correspondence that we can build these bridges. As above, so below is not some trite New Age statement. It's an exact occult fact if, according to the Tibetan, you can use the law of analogy and correspondence with occult exactitude, that the lesser, the greater contains the lesser, and there are all these bridges. This is technically what the Rainbow Bridge is. It's the return trip, if I may be so flippant here, to our journey down into this dimension. And when we can recognize our personality rays, our personality note and color, our soul note and color, we have found a major key to returning along these threads that were spun or descended by the monad to the soul level, and then the soul level down to the personality level. So it's all about the law of septenary sevens and building bridges. And all we're trying to do here is to give visual images and symbols of those bridges. Some mundane, some very esoteric. Any other questions or comments? Thank you.
Yes, Walter had a comment. He says, yes, it's all about continual refinements.
Yes, continual refinement. Alchemical fires burn off the dross, and that's white magic in its highest
Well,
form.
I just really appreciate what you just said, because I hadn't really realized the significance in that way before of knowing your rays. Because it's really is a part of you. It's who you are in a deeper respect that I've never really identified with, and that when you see it as a part of this great cosmic mosaic, it's like it's a tail, it's a line, it's a thread that you can find your way home from, because it's an emanation of yourself.
Exactly. And the Tibetan says there's no break in continuity of consciousness of the monad in all of its instruments. It's only the personality that lacks that continuity, that break in the between the third and fourth subplane on the mental plane. And when that gap is bridged by meditation, visualization, and projection, you now you have the freedom. You enter into the soul, and eventually into what DK calls the freedom of the ashram. Excellent. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, we have a hand up.
Excellent.
You should be able to talk.
Can you hear
Asha?
me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I love the way you're describing this. I'm understanding things that I've never been able to get, because there's a simplicity and I don't know, something is registering. When you use the word alchemical fire burning off the growth, and that's AKA white magic and purification, a thought occurred to me that as we move through these soul journeys, and when we see all these visuals, and we see constant evolution, constant movement, and that in this dimension that we're in right now, we seem to have, these dark nights, this pain, this suffering, these crucifixions, these resurrections, all these labels in the collective consciousness that seem to be a part of this journey. And yet when we look at these visuals, we just see movement. We don't label them as with these things that are part. I mean, I know I'm kind of a novice at this, so forgive my simplistic question, but the thought occurred to me, I don't know, does this have to be, these initiations, dark nights of the soul, dark nights, can we as a collective consciousness label it something else? I don't know what I'm thinking, but that thought just occurred to me as I see what it is on the higher. It's movement, it's change, it's constant burning off the dross. So any comments from you, Wayne, would be appreciated.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying, and I agree. And let me share one little interesting insight about the vortex, because everything we're presenting here is spherical, and it has an inlet and an outlet, and that these spheres nest and they communicate amongst themselves because energy passes in the male vortex, it exits the female, and then they, even though they're separated, they're all one composite. And it's like a dance. And we often forget that the contact with the higher levels is characterized, according to the Tibetan, by simplicity. And that a lot of facts and information are fused together into one moment of revelation in which you step back, or I should say, maybe you step forward and participate in a process. Just like Rose pointed out, just like other comments, we're trying to awaken ourselves to a process. The Buddhists say when the disciple enters the path that you're entering the stream. Now, there are many reasons for that, but one of the key reasons is because you're entering into a flow, and that flow has no beginning, and that flow has no ending. Well, we say it ends in the sea, the nirvanic sea, but even that is an ending, whereas technically there's just one revelation after another that are seamlessly connected when we can build these bridges. And where does the resistance come from? The resistance comes because when you go from one initiation to another, one ray to another ray, one level to another ray, you have two different types of Davic or angelic lives that you're trying to make compatible. You're trying to bring them into harmony and synthesis. And the burning ground that DK speaks of is primarily the two different types of elemental and Davic substance that are incompatible. And this is one of the reasons why you have to stand steady in the discomfort of initiation. Now, I'm not talking about overstimulation where you need to just shut the thing down and just chill because you're way overstimulated, but it's all right to experience a certain amount of discomfort because that discomfort indicates you are burning off the dross. This idea of the new age, well, you're just going to go down to the beach and have a tall, cool one, and God is going to come and give you everything you want, is a mistaken idea of the process of initiation. It's a forcing process. It's a surging forward and being daring and being a lion of God, as HPB would say. Interesting, we're right in the Leo lion right now. We're in the cooker. So if anybody's feeling discomfort, trust me, no one is alone. We're all experiencing on different levels that burning. But what I wanted to say in conclusion is that going back to the idea of the vortex, when you create a vortex, you create a vacuum. When you create a vacuum, two things happen. One, you throw off the heavier atoms in your different vehicles. Imagine you have a physical, you have an etheric, astral, and mental vortex. They're all spinning and they're nesting one within the other, but each one is a little more advanced than the other. What happens is when you can cause that rotary motion to go exponential and become cyclic spiral motion like the corkscrew or the helix, what happens is the heavier atoms cannot sustain the velocity and they fly off and they fly out into a different dimension where they're actually supposed to be, which is really down in the earth where another level of transmutation is happening. And then what happens, if that's not magical enough, when all these heavy atoms are thrown out, the vortex, the vacuum in the vortex pulls down another level of high atomic substance to replace it. So we're constantly in this cosmic blender on multiple levels where we're building in and throwing out, building in and throwing out. And again, if you're feeling any discomfort A, you're not alone, and B, you may be doing exactly what you're supposed to. Okay, any additional questions? The vortex we are going to get into, and we're going to study that from so many different angles because it takes us from linear thinking into abstract and intuitive thinking.
And I have a follow-up question, please, Brian.
Yes.
Academic question. I'll ask it anyway. So all this happens outside the absolute. The absolute is something beyond all of this, right?
Yes.
Or does the absolute pervade all of this too? Is the absolute here in this? It's some, I don't know, some other motion sort of ether or some kind of thing. I don't know.
have a bad connection here. Rose or BL, could you sort of summarize what she said?
I think she was saying that does all this happen beyond the absolute? And how I would think of it is no, because the absolute is the absolute. So it is all a part of the absolute, that it is all within the absolute, that it's all a part of the divine play and the illusion of duality, so that you even have motion, so that you even have time, that you even have space and distance, because these are different dimensional levels of awareness, whereas in the absolute, there is no time, there is no space, there is no duality, there is just oneness. And yet in that oneness, you have this divine play of all this differentiation that is manifested as the universe and all of its goings on. And back to your earlier comment, Asha, about how in the world, if we could see things differently from a different perspective, when you were talking about that, what came to my mind was, you're talking about the light and the darkness and the turmoil going on in the world, and then here, like with these videos, what we're talking about, it's all just motion. Well, if you can see and make that relationship between even the minutest thing in the mundane world or plane is a part of this mosaic of a much bigger blender, using Twain's term, of energies and forces, which are causes of playing in the outer world that we see as this suffering life. That's one side of it. Then, the other side of it is great joy and revelation and all of that. It's a working out of these energies and motions in this divine play with duality. And it's a part of the friction of duality. And it isn't necessarily good or bad. And there is no such thing as good or bad in this context. It's polarity and duality, as Dwayne was mentioning.
Excellent.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, now we're going to move on to another
You have one more hand and one more comment.
Okay, let's have them.
Okay, the comment is from Suzanne, and she says it is turning the irritation of our shells into the pearls of our souls.
That's beautiful. It's
Isn't that great?
exact, and it's poetic at the same time.
And then Heidi has has her hand up.
Okay.
Go ahead, Heidi. You should be.
Am I on?
Yes.
Good to see you.
I just wanted to say that I am grateful to hear that. I think in the world that is seen by many, it is people try to get out of what's uncomfortable, and in that it creates actually a vortex of holding rather than allowing this flow that you're talking about. And so when there's a willingness to allow that edge of uncomfortableness, it allows one to actually enter the flow. I'm happy to hear what the conversation, I'm happy to hear what people are getting from it, because I actually know it to be true.
Yes. We have to become indifferent to the discomforts that come our way. Now, on a practical level, we have to know when we're exceeding our capabilities. So it's a paradox,
Mm-hmm.
but I agree, and thank you for that feedback. We have to,
Dwayne, I think you might should speak a little closer to your computer. You're sounding a little distant, at least for me.
okay, maybe I need to turn up. Okay, let's do that. Okay, how's that? Is that better?
Yes, it is.
Okay, excellent. So any more comments or questions?
No, I don't see any.
Okay, so we're going to move into another video, but we're going to get a little background of how this video came about. And it's about superclusters. And superclusters, we know, are regions. BL, would you like to read this? My throat is a little scratchy.
Okay. Redrawing the boundaries of the cosmic map. Superclusters, regions of space that are densely packed with galaxies, are the biggest structures in the universe. But scientists have struggled to define exactly where one supercluster ends and another begins. Now, a team based in Hawaii has come up with a new technique that maps the universe according to the flow of galaxies across space. Redrawing the boundaries of the cosmic map, they redefine our home supercluster, and name it Laniakea, which means immeasurable heaven in Hawaiian. I probably butchered that name, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
The whole idea is to have large maps. When we were children and we were first presented with a roadmap, we might have said, wow, pretty colors, interesting, intriguing, but we weren't trained in how to interpret the map. Well, all of these symbols and images that we're dealing with now in the Ageless Wisdom teachings are really identical, only on a much higher, more expanded level. We need, as DK says, we need to understand the language of the initiates, and their language is the language of symbols. And he also says at some future point, language will die out
Completely.
altogether, and we'll speak through color, sound, vibration, telepathy.
Perfect. Yes, I'm on it.
Okay, so let's do this as a meditation. It's sort of a fifth ray, fourth ray, and you're really going to enjoy it.
Somewhere in the universe is a small blue planet, the third rock from a star called the Sun, just one of billions of stars in a spiral galaxy known as the Milky Way. But where in the universe is the Milky Way? A team of scientists gathered data on more than 8,000 of the galaxies that surround us. They mapped each galaxy's position and movement in space. And, for the first time, they've shown that the Milky Way is part of a much larger system of galaxies, a supercluster that they have named Laniakea. The Milky Way is nested in the furthest reaches of this structure, on the outskirts. The entire universe can be seen as an intricate network of galaxies, a cosmic web. Some areas are almost empty, dark voids. Others are densely packed with galaxies in regions known as superclusters. Superclusters are the biggest structures found in the universe, but scientists have struggled to define where one ends and another begins. To map our home supercluster, a team led by Brent Tully at the University of Hawaii studied the motions of the galaxies around us in unprecedented detail. Even though the entire universe is expanding rapidly, gravity is also at work, pulling against this acceleration. By discounting cosmic expansion, the team worked out which galaxies are being pulled towards us, shown in blue, and which are being pulled away, shown in red. This enabled them to create a map of cosmic flows, the paths that galaxies migrate along, tugged at a tiny pace by the force of gravity. Using this motion, they came up with a new way to map the distribution of matter in the universe. Delving into our home supercluster, you can see that most galaxies are being pulled towards a dense center. This is known as the Great Attractor. Our galaxy is among those sliding towards this patch of space, which dominates our region of the universe. Let's take a different view. Each circle represents a galaxy. Again, we can see most galaxies being pulled towards the Great Attractor in the direction of the arrows. Between the Great Attractor and us, the Milky Way, there's a relatively empty area, a blue void. And next to us is Virgo, a large and dense cluster whose bright galaxies have been observed from Earth for centuries. Until now, astronomers grouped us, the Milky Way and its surrounding galaxies, with Virgo and nearly 100 other clusters in a supercluster that stretches 100 million light years across. But using this new technique, we can see that this is just the tip of the iceberg. This cluster of clusters is merely an appendage of a much larger supercluster, more than 100 times bigger and more massive. But how did the team know how to redraw the boundaries of this cosmic map? Here's our supercluster in black and a neighboring structure, Perseus Pisces, in red. Scientists defined the boundary as the points where the flows of galaxies diverge, like water dividing at a watershed. This is where neighboring structures shear apart. This is the first clear definition of a supercluster. Laniakea means immeasurable heaven in Hawaiian, a fitting name for the vast community of galaxies that we are a part of. So now we know that on the edge of a supercluster called Laniakea, in a galaxy called the Milky Way, around a star we call the Sun, there is a small blue planet, our home.
Well, if that doesn't take your breath away, nothing will. Imagine the scientific research and work that went in to outlining this spectacular cosmology. It's just incredible. And as esotericists, we understand that all of these superclusters, galaxies, suns, all of these are just the outer form life of intelligences and in cosmic realities of which we know practically nothing. As I outlined earlier, where many of us are in training and struggling to see what's in our own solar system, and maybe at the third initiation get a glimpse of what's coming outside. But this is just profound, and I would like to have any comments or questions. But I hope they're simple questions, because I may have to rely on some astrologers here to help me.
They're real simple questions. We have none.
Yeah. Okay. Any comments?
Other than wow.
I hope every astrologer here gets this link. You can get it off of YouTube. and use it somehow, some way in their astrological work, because I find it extremely humbling to see our small position in this immense interlocking panorama of energies and forces.
I have a comment. I'm reminded by what the Tibetan said, that for every new discovery in the field of science that, or for every new discovery humanity makes, that it corresponds to some recognition or awareness with the hierarchy. And he gave like an example of when a new planet was discovered, that it had this correlation with, I don't remember the exact quote, but with, with hierarchy and with some connection that humanity was making. And that, so what I see in the last, how many years has it been since DK's last writings? What, 75 or 70, 75 years, especially in the field of astronomy, these absolutely massive revelations of way beyond discovering of a new planet, but discovering of new whole galaxies and superclusters and black holes. It's so far expansive beyond the one about whom not may be said. Like, it's like the one about whom not may be said is like a tiny atom of, he's like the tiny atom of the body of this really big one about whom may really not be said. And then, and beyond and beyond. So I just wonder what the Tibetan would say today with where humanity has gone in its broadening of its scope of awareness of this huge macrocosm that we were just touching the tiniest fringes of back 70 years ago. What implications does that have on a spiritual level and on a consciousness level with humanity's relationship with like the hierarchy and these other planes? And I wish I had that quote exactly so I could more articulate this comment, but it's just something that came to mind, seeing this.
Excellent. Any additional comments?
Yes, Helen says the image of the two black and red systems reminded me of the blue 8 double vortex animation that you
Yes,
have shown us before.
they all conform to that figure 8, because a figure 8 is two vortices that are either side by side, or in the Vesica Pisces, they're overlapping their individual ring past knots, and they're merging and they're creating something new and creative. Yes, it's like a dance. The polarities go on all the way up through. Duality doesn't stop simply because you take the third initiation or the fourth or the fifth. They become more refined. Because when you get up onto cosmic levels, you got the cosmic, physical, etheric, cosmic, astral, cosmic, mental, and duality exists up there. But compared to what we're familiar with, we often say, looking up in wonder, they are formless. The soul is formless. The monad is formless. Actually, they are not formless, but the form is so ethereal, it defies anything that we can understand. Okay, good. Any additional comments? Okay, let's move on to am I correct if I point out that the great attractor was actually Centaura in the constellation of Centaurus? Was that mentioned in that great attractor? We're going to see who's got the fifth ray now. Anyway, according to astronomy, Centaurus is a system that is really the nearest known star to the sun, to our sun. So I guess it probably couldn't have been the great attractor, since that was huge distances. But to pick up on what Rose said, you're very intuitive, Rose, and you sort of helped me move to the next part of the presentation. And that is that according to science, this Proxima Centauri, which is in the constellation of Centaurus, which is the nearest known star to our sun, went radiatory a year ago and blasted out. And let's see if I can get up the correct specs here. It wasn't like a supernova where it flashed and then it sort of imploded on itself. It just flashed and then went back. And as it says here, this new analysis implied that the star actually released a 1 minute long flare 1,000 times brighter than the star's usual shine. That's pretty bright. And then he talks about it was 10 times brighter than the most powerful solar flares from our own sun on record. And here's another bit of information on this, that the UV light produced by this superflare reached the surface with 100 times the intensity required to kill a simple UV hardy microorganisms. And I think they're referring here to a planet that they've discovered in that system, in that Centaurian system. And they're trying to figure out if life could survive that kind of blast, that kind of exposure to these flares. But what I found interesting is that, to go back to what Rose said, that any discovery of a new planet or a new system cosmologically is the result of the pressure of the spiritual on the personality levels coming from the inside out. And this is what gives us these visions and this knowledge and this understanding of the new and the creative. They're not fabricated in people's minds, no matter how intelligent they are. They're assimilated, they're grounded, but they come from much higher levels. And when a sun that's the closest to us than any other sun is going through these major expansions of radiation and heat and light, you can be sure it's having a major effect on us, not just as it pours in and affects the plasma in our sun, and then is stepped down and affects the plasma, protective plasma shields around our planet Earth, and of course the other planets. This is pretty powerful stuff. And if you get into the prophecies of the, well, so many different groups, it doesn't require going into, because many of you are already familiar with these different prophecies coming at this time, at the end of time, these Aztec prophecies. It's very, very interesting. And I wanted to take this one step further because it ties in beautifully to a quotation by the Tibetan. And it supports everything that we're saying here, but it brings in another factor, and that is of infrared and ultraviolet light or colors. And Rose, would you like to read this?
Yes, I can read this. The ultraviolet gamut of colors an intensification of the light. Dwayne, can you make this full screen?
Yes, I can make this full screen. Thank you.
An intensification of the light is going on all the time. And this increases in intensity. And this increase in intensity began on the Earth at about the time when man discovered the uses of electricity, which discovery was a direct result of this intensification. The electrification of the planet through the widespread use of electricity is one of the things which is inaugurating the new age, and which will aid in bringing about the revelation of the presence of the soul. Before long, this intensification will become so great that it will materially assist in the rendering of the veil which separates the astral plane from the physical plane. The dividing etheric web will shortly be dissipated, and this will permit a more rapid inflow of the third aspect of light, the light from the astral plane, a starry radiance, and the light of the planet itself will be more closely blended. And the result upon humanity and upon the three other kingdoms in nature cannot be overemphasized. It will, for one thing, profoundly affect the human eye and make the present sporadic etheric vision a universal asset. It will bring within the radius of our range of contact the infrared and ultraviolet gamut of colors, and we shall see what at present is hidden. All this will tend to destroy the platform upon which the materialists stand, and to pave the way, first, for the admission of the soul as a sound hypothesis, and secondly, for the demonstration of its existence. We only need more light, in the esoteric sense, in order to see the soul, and that light will shortly be available, and we shall understand the meaning of the words, and in that light shall we see light.
This really deserves a lot more time than we have, but let me say this. We just read earlier how that in 2017, there was this great burst of energy coming from the sun that's closest to us, and it had 100 times the ultraviolet potency that it normally has. Well, you can be sure that is coming down to our system. It impacts our sun, which probably filters out a lot of it. Then it comes down through the different planets, and then it is probably even further filtered by the plasma shield that we have around the Earth. But even if a small amount of that gets through, it explains in a new and creative way how all these happenings out there in these great stellar systems is actually affecting us right now. That if DK is saying that we need to bring the radius of our range of contact into the infrared and the ultraviolet gamut, well, this is sure helping. I want a show of hands of all those who have seen my Lightweaver machine. I display it at the USR conference and in other places. BL, could you just see if anybody has actually seen it besides yourself and Rose and maybe Michael and Walter? Okay, 6 participants raised hands. Oh, now it's down to 4. 3. Well, I'm not sure which is the correct one, but in any event, that Lightweaver machine is used to demonstrate the 7 rays in motion, triangles as they rotate at high speed, and a whole bunch of other important technical details of the occult path. But actually, one of the most potent, and I may have mentioned this, but I may not have, is the fact that the pigments of the Lightweaver machine, all the appendages that rotate at high speed, they are done with fluorescent colors, and the lighting system is ultraviolet. And that's why you can't watch the Lightweaver machine if anybody has a window open and there's light pouring in, or you have lights on inside the building or where we're viewing it, because the light is so subtle, the smallest ambient light coming in from outside will cancel it. And it looks 3 and 4th dimensional. It has a purity of colors that you really can't describe unless you've seen it. And I'm happy to see that a number of people have seen it. So that is my small and humble contribution over the many, many years that I've been working with Michael, and it's been well over 33. I met Michael before he even started the conferences back in New Jersey to expose people, to expose large groups of people to ultraviolet light. And it has to be done just right, because ultraviolet light can actually be not good for you if you get it in too much doses under the wrong conditions. In fact, when you watch the Lightweaver, you don't actually see the ultraviolet lights themselves. You see only the pigments that are illuminated. Okay, excellent. Any comments? Okay, we're getting, let's see, how much time do we have? Oh, here's my phone right here. Okay, just checking the time frame. Okay, we're a little over, but I want to end this with one more video. So I'm going to skip a little bit, but DK talks about, in this quote, that the entire universal pattern, which we sort of are challenged to understand, all these outer constellations, as Michael brought forth, and all this wonderful work that Walter is doing, all this plays upon, if you look at this quote, I'm not going to read the whole thing, and read the part where it says, all these greater triangles, they condition the entire universal pattern, and this pattern can be gained by those students who have studied somewhat the various triangles to be found in the etheric body of man through the interrelation of the 7 centers to which I have referred elsewhere in my various books. Okay, this next image is an example of all the triangles that are activated between the 1st and 5th initiation, taken directly from a treatise in cosmic fire. They are the major triangles, and other than just a few, not the minor triangles. And so you have the macrocosm reflected here through the microcosm. And what we're going to do now, and we're going to go over this in other presentations, so don't be dismayed if you can't get all the details of this. But now what we're going to do is we're going to end this presentation on a series of rotating triangles. And as these triangles rotate, you'll notice that there are primarily 3 points to the triangle, but there are subsidiary linking points of the triangles, plural. And as you watch this, as it gets towards the end, it'll begin to speed up, and you'll see clearly how a triangle, when it's set in motion at a high enough speed, becomes the vortex, or it becomes, from 3rd aspect, rotary motion, to 2nd aspect of deity, cyclic spiral. It's a magnificent work of art. I wish I could say I created this, but I did not. I simply am revealing it for your pleasure. Okay, so this is a meditation. So take a deep breath, relax. I'm going to have to work on some of these videos and make them a little more streamlined. But to me, that is another video that falls into the category of profound. It just demonstrates so beautifully how something so simple as 3 points of a triangle, when set in motion, when seen as a fractal, when seen holographically, extends itself infinitely up and infinitely down in scale. Are there any last comments before we close? Any insights? If you remember that one symbol rotating, and often these symbols are so powerful, you will take them with you. It's not like, oh, I have to run back and get it at Makara. When you're least expected, that image may pop out and start vibrating in your auric field, because it's not just some interesting artistic work of art I've done, however beautiful. It is a symbol of hierarchical work. It is a symbol of the new Jacob's ladder that's going to take us from the mundane to the infinite, building on mental levels, of course, what we're only seeing visually. Any comments or questions?
Yes, we do, Dwayne, and we have lost BL temporarily.
That's all right.
So some of the comments from Walter is back earlier when you were talking about the great attractor. He said that it's located at 14 Sagittarius,
Okay.
near the star Alpha Promina Centauri, is located at 29 Sagittarius.
Excellent.
And
Love that fifth ray.
and then Asha says, all this info is so comforting somehow, and I feel peaceful. And Suzanne Miller says, a stunning and inspiraling presentation. Many thanks to all. Don't forget the dance of the what is that word? Perseid meteor shower tonight.
Excellent.
And Helen says, profound thanks. And we have a hand up by Vera, and it says to allow to talk, I have to make her a panelist. So I'm going to do that, and you can try to speak. We have to wait till she rejoins as a panelist. Oh.
Is that something you can do for her?
It said she was using an older version, and that would be the only way to allow her to talk, but it doesn't seem that she has come back. So I guess that's all for now. Oh, well, Walter has his hand up, so let's unmute Walter. So
Well, yes.
Go ahead, Walter.
I made a correction to what I typed in the chat box, and so just in proper alignment with Ray 5, which wants to be accurate, I typed something wrong the first time. So the great attractor is located at 14 degrees Sagittarius, if astrologers are interested in that. However, the very near star Alpha Centauri, also known as Proxima Centauri, is actually located at 29 degrees Scorpio.
Okay, thank you. Excellent. I appreciate that, Walter. We want to get our facts straight. Any additional comments before we close?
Yes, Heidi says, thank you for this presentation. Beautiful.
Thank you for coming. And I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to make this work, because we're all connected telepathically on a group level. And even though we may be in different parts of the country or the world, we still can share the bounty, the magnetism, and what DK calls the group warmth. We love you, and we look forward to seeing you again at our next session. I'm going to let you X out, Rose.
I think only you can end the meeting.
Okay. I don't see the team viewer. Okay, let's.
First off, stop the recording.
I have no icons up that relate to, oh, here's the Zoom. Okay, I got it. So stop. I don't see anything that says stop meeting. It says up recorded. Let me keep looking.
Click on the, yes, click on more.
I don't see anything that says more. Upcoming, recorded, start.
Oh,
edit.
no, on the bottom.
It
Oh,
says,
okay, okay, wait, just at the bottom left-hand corner, it says leave meeting. I think that will close it for everybody. See the bottom right corner, I'm sorry. It says leave meeting in
Nope.
red.
no, it's not on mine. It's not on my desktop.
Oh,
Can you press Alt plus Q?
Alt.
Oh, wait, if that's a Macintosh?
No, this is the PC.
Oh, but I think if you hold down the Alt key and press Q, I mean, that's the shortcut key for leave meeting. So if you don't have a leave meeting button, that may end it for you.
Alt it, Alt.
Hold down the Alt key, and then while holding down the Alt key, press Q.
Well, we'll have to cut this part out, obviously. Thank you, good Lord, that was after our good group brothers and sisters. I mean, there's still probably a few on there having a chuckle, but
Oh, you can also try Alt plus F4, because that will just close the window in a more generic way in Windows.
Alt plus what?
F4.
Do you really want to exit go meeting? Yes, Walter, that did it. Thank you so much. And I can't tell you how much, Walter, I appreciate what you're doing. I support it. And I'm going to do everything in my power to see that your work gets wider application, wider distribution, and work with you in whatever way I can.
Oh, thank you very much. And definitely many thanks to you for holding this webinar today, along with Rose and BL for making it happen as well.
Yes. Thank you so much. Okay, brother. Love you.
Love in return.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, Rose, I have a question.
just open TeamViewer. I'll do it from there.
Okay. Password 5583. How could Walter talk to us if if we close the meeting?
You didn't. You're still on.
Oh, come on. We're going to be the laughing stock of the occult community, which is good.
Okay, first thing you want to do is stop the recording.
Aha. See, I didn't say anything about stopping any recordings.
Wait. Meeting controls.
Well, that must be, I didn't see that one. Stop share.
Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on.
Stop recording. I see it. Excellent.